Hey, thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Business of Fun podcast. It's me, your host, Dave Wakeman. My guest today from UNC-Greensboro is Hannah Grannemann, and we talk about arts marketing and a whole bunch of great stuff. But first, let me remind you a few things. I'm releasing this episode on around noon on Tuesday, January 25th. To try out a brand new sign-up form, a little system for webinars and things like this, I am hosting a webinar, free webinar tomorrow afternoon called 7 Ways to Sell More Tickets in 2022. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. You'll be able to sign up for free. It's just a way for me to test out the system, so you'll be able to get that. Make sure you get my Talking Tickets newsletter. You can get it by signing up at talkingtickets.substack.com or send me an email, dave@davewakeman.com. And make sure you check out my friends at Booking Protect, the global leaders in refund protection. Simon, I have been told, is going to be doing a special presentation at the Ticketing Professional Conference in March in Birmingham, England, on fraud, ticket refund protection, all kinds of great stuff. So you want to check them out. That's bookingprotect.com. There's some really cool blog posts, some really cool articles, some really cool information there. The big takeaway is that since tickets have started to go back on sale and lockdowns have eased around the world, that refund protection has increased in utilization by customers, in some places double. So that's just a clear sign that people want the peace of mind. They want the protection that refund protection provides them. So check out bookingprotect.com. Find out how you can offer your guest refund protection. It will help. Make sure also you check out my website. I keep updating it. It's beautiful, new. It's not so new now, but it's still new to me. DaveWakeman.com. There's all kinds of great stuff there. I've got a bunch of really crazy things that I'm going to try to roll out this year. Now that I'm over the COVID, or mostly over the COVID. Don't get this thing. Don't go do any of those crazy things like, let's get this over with by going to a COVID party. It ain't worth the trouble. All right, let me tell you. But back to Hannah. Hannah Grannemann is a assistant professor at UNC-Greensboro. And we had a great conversation. She was a good sport. She did the 7 quick fire questions. And actually we ended up getting a whole lot out of the whole thing. So it was great because we were able to talk about meditation. We were able to talk about hustle culture, theater. We were talking about, where she gets a lot of her information from. We talked about the arts. We talked about the power of reach that organizations have gained due to the pandemic and the necessary changes that they had to make to their operations. We talked about how to engage these new audiences. We talked about positioning yourself according to the value you create for an audience. We talked about how people have adapted, and on the other side, some of the struggles that people have had. We talked about different organizations that Hannah really has dug from all over the country. We talked about, needing to stand up and be yourself. We talked about experimentation. We talked about marketing. It was a great conversation. So I'm not going to hold this one up because I think you're going to dig this one. This is my conversation with Hannah Grannemann on The Business of Fun. I would like to welcome Hannah Grannemann to the Business of Fun podcast. Hannah, I want to say before we even start that you are the very first guest to ever ask for quick fire questions, and I'm going to deliver. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
Yeah, you say that now, and then a half hour, 45 minutes go by, and you're going to be like, I hate Dave. He's an awful person. He totally sucks.
No, it's great. I have read a lot of your stuff, and I've listened to some episodes of the podcast, and I think you and I are simpatico. So what we actually need to do is make sure we don't get into groupthink and affirming each other too much, right? Because I think we really are in the same mind space. So.
Well, we'll see, because that, again, like I said, in a half hour, you might have a whole different opinion about me. So quick fire questions, the very first person to ever ask for these things. So I was like, now I got to go here and dig in real quick and figure out what we're going to do. So usually I know the people pretty well when I do these, so that when I do ask them, they're not going to get offended at me. So you have to promise not to get offended by the quick fire questions, but I don't think there's any that are completely way out of line, not like the one with Pauline Fallowell, and that was kind of, but that was like a complete in joke. So, all right, so we'll start. I'm gonna start easy. I was searching through the internet, and I found out that you had I don't know if you still do. So that's part of the question, but the second part of the question was that you were a consistent meditator. Look, the research department here is good. The tech department sucks, but the research
where on
department
earth was that? My goodness. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So Headspace or Insight app?
A Headspace. And I have been with Headspace since since shortly after my son was born. So I also know you and I both have an 11-year-old son. So I've been meditating with Headspace for like 10 years. So love Andy. And it's evolved, and it has been so interesting to be a customer of theirs for all this time and see them move and grow and expand over this time. So great question. And they're a service and a product that I keep my eye on as well.
See, that was a pretty good one. I feel pretty proud of how I came up with that one. That was pretty good. All right, so let's see here. Okay. Let me see. I have them in order, but there's no way I'm going to go in order. All right. So here's another thing I found out by going to the internet here. I'm going to ask you sense or nonsense. Okay. Sense or no. But hustle culture.
Okay. I listened to you and Giles, your conversation.
Yeah.
And so now I like, if you'd said me a couple days ago, I'd be like, I don't quite know, but I know what you mean. Yes, hustle culture is dangerous. So as you guys talked about, I think that, and in this reset time, now is the time to break out of it, right?
Yes.
So yes, no on the hustle culture. Yes, on I know we're going to talk about experimentation and trying new things and testing your comfort zone. So where are the lines there, right? And so that's an interesting question. So how do you also go out and seize opportunities, but without falling into the hustle culture, which I think means burnout, which I think means this hubris, and that is dangerous and toxic. So. How do we?
I will tell you where that one came from then too, because I saw that you are often will share articles that are like, this is a great idea if you don't have a family or kids. Which I was like going, yeah, so much of this stuff is like going, yeah, if you're like 24 and you have a trust fund, it totally works. If you're like a normal person, it's complete and utter nonsense. But so it's like going, oh, that's a good one. I'm in. So far, I believe I'm 2 for 2 on these. I haven't done anything wrong yet. Okay, let's see here. Okay, all right. I don't know if this one's really going to hit the same way that the first two did, but I'll ask you. And I'll be honest, I should ask a different one than this one, but I don't know. I think that this is probably the easiest one, and then we can talk about why in a second. So Hamilton versus West Side Story.
Great question. Okay, so Hamilton, because I really have been reading a lot of the critiques that are coming out and the real critical thinking that's coming out around West Side Story, and that's been I was aware of it, but I wasn't as deep into it, and so that's been really good for me to expand my own experience about. And I also look at the price tag of that movie, and I'm thinking, oh my, what could be made with another $100 million?
Yeah.
And and I think there's good questions being asked about why is West Side Story getting a remake. And I am not a Hamilton super fan, but I watched it the day that it came out on the live stream. I still haven't seen it in person. I have not been able to get myself to spend the money, the $250, as big as it is in the theater world. And I have, friends and colleagues that worked on back in the workshop, and how amazing it's been, but I just have not been able to swipe my credit card for that. So I really enjoyed the live stream, and have watched it a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Catherine and Cormac, they watched it on Disney Plus too, and they loved it. I still have never seen it because I think when I was in London last, which has now been so long, they were like, "Oh, you should come see the show," because they were like, "Oh, I've never seen it," and I was like, "Well, frankly, I'm going to go see soccer," because I always will go see like English soccer before, over everything. So like when somebody does the quick fire questions to me and they'll go West End versus Premier League, I'm gonna go Premier League because it's like like a wild thing. But Hamilton, I love. Was the other question, the other one I would have been, but I was like, oh, this is a little esoteric, and I don't know if people are gonna really know this one. I mean, people who are in the theater probably do, but I would say Hamilton versus my favorite, which is The Assassins.
Oh yeah. So
Yeah,
I am not a musical person.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk to people who love musicals,
Yeah.
They say, oh yeah, but you'd like Sondheim. And so over the years, I have engaged more and more with Sondheim, and they have been right.
Mm-hmm.
So we did Assassins when I was at Playmakers Repertory Company, and yeah, it's a great. It's an amazing show, and the book that just came out by James Lapine called Putting It Together. I really highly recommend. It's just a great walk through the process of new musical development. And I had never seen Sunday in the Park with George, so I went to my library and got it out. And so I've engaged more with Sondheim. I do have to say though that Phantom of the Opera when I was a teenager was one of my gateway shows into theater, and now I'm kind of like no thanks, I'm not so much but I also did watch, I say that and then like I was totally watching Annie live last week, but I had it on and I was watching it and listening to it mostly because I was watching Twitter.
Oh, save that for later.
Yeah.
I would say my gateway into Broadway too was so I started out like in the theater world. So I've touched all over the place. We were talking about that before I started recording, but at the Seattle Theater Group. So I don't remember how long, but I've seen The Sound of Music, I'm going to say at least 50 times. But so that was like kind of the gateway to the whole thing. But like my real gateway to Broadway was actually Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. It was a play. And so like I would say that I'm much more of a play person. And so The Pillow Man is still like the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I saw that Catherine and I talk about it, like we went to Thanksgiving one year. We saw it was Hugh Jackman and Daniel Craig in a play. And then we took her mom to see that motherfucker in the coat or the hat, whatever it was, with Chris Rock. And I was like, and Catherine's like looking at me like, you brought my fucking 70-year-old mom. I was like, wow, I'm sorry, I didn't know. But she was like going, oh, this is so amazing. So I was like, it was great. But I totally like the plays, but like The Assassins and The Producers, and even to an extent, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels is one that always stuck with me. But yeah, so okay, so that's so far. Listen, that's 3 for 3. I'm 3 for 3 right now. Okay, so this one, let's see how this hits a little more. I think this one's like kind of a throwaway, so we'll put it at like the halfway. It's like a hinge. So NC or NYC?
So I love living in North Carolina, and 2 days ago it was 70 degrees. So the weather is a big part of that. I lived in New York for 8 years. So I went to undergraduate at New York University and then lived there afterwards until I went to grad school at Yale. And I loved living there, and I'm glad that I did it. And I don't really want to live there anymore, but I have such a yearning to visit right now. So I watched Russian Doll, which was amazing. And it's all in the East Village. And I just they had this scene in a dank East Village bar. And I just was like, oh my goodness. So I am really dying to go back and visit. Maybe someone will give me like a visiting assistantship, have me be a visiting professor after my kids are grown up and I can leave for a few, that would be amazing. So I'm longing to go back and visit, and you can't beat the arts there. I mean, you just can't beat what you can see. And so I miss having access to that on a regular basis, but I love the warm winters down here. And And it's a great, this is a great place to live. I've now been here since 2008. So we've lived here for a long time. Yeah.
Oh, see, like, okay, so that was not as like, that was actually better. The research department's getting a raise.
I know, you're hitting
research.
all the marks.
All right, so let's see here. All right, and then let's do this one then. Facebook or Twitter?
They serve different purposes, which is a good marketing consultant answer, right?
Very right. So I'll allow it. Yeah.
So I use them for me and my purposes. So Facebook is definitely, my friends are on there, my family is on there, a circle of colleagues is on there, especially all the people that I went to grad school with, both on the business school side and the drama school side. So it's a way that I also stay in touch with them on a professional level and on a personal level. So I love the, here's the pictures of my kids part of Facebook. But I also use it for professional purposes to help get my, my work seen and known, and a bit of awareness about my program, my arts administration program here at UNC-Greensboro. But they're not really, who I'm friends with is not like the target population for that. Yeah. And then, I don't seek out to friend my students or alums, but sometimes if they friend me, I accept it. So also sometimes I'm trying to get out information to them a little bit, or at least have them read it and feel proud that they're part of the program. So I see that purpose. And then the alumni of the theater management program at Yale has a really strong private Facebook group that I use. And Twitter also, I really have very much mostly a professional presence. So you dug up my comment about which I think was a Twitter comment where I said to somebody, that's a lovely morning routine if nobody else lives in your house, because I have small children and I can't wake up and play the flute and meditate for 20 minutes. That's just not possible. That was probably a Twitter comment, but I'm mostly professional. And that's a way that I do get my work out to a lot of other visibility among other researchers in the arts is important, so that my work will get disseminated. So I'll get invited to do things. And a lot of them are on Twitter. It's a main way that I also just stay up on the field. Right. So that I just stay up on the conversations of what's going on. So I am mostly a lurker. But then when I have something to post,
like it's like watching, a scary, like you're scary. I like that.
that I'm just reading and watching, and it's a main way. It's a great way, if you put intention behind it, to get out of your bubble. On all kinds of levels. But then I've also, with my blog that I'm writing, I am trying to be very active on Twitter to get people to read the posts there. So now I'm teaching myself more about, scheduling posts and when and how all of that works. So I'm a both. They have different.
Okay, that's a good answer though.
And LinkedIn is a third purpose. So
have you figured that one out yet? Because if you figure out how to schedule the posts in a way that works, will you let me know? Right. And then B, if you figure out how to make LinkedIn so it's just I don't get spammed with like sales pitches, could you also let me know about that as well?
Yeah, and I have it's a way that I just collect. I hear somebody, I see somebody, I collect contacts there. I do have also another alumni private group that's for UNCG alumni working in arts administration. That is a cultivation, good place to keep relationships going. And then it's a great place to get my work out about, again, in this public scholarship kind of way, the blog that I'm writing or a presentation that I'm doing, and then for people to boost you. So when one of my first posts, Andrew Racino's from Tessitura picked it up, the leader of Dallas Black Dance Theater picked it up, and that helped other people to read it. So it's a great multiplier. So I'm continuing to work on how to make all of those social media aspects work for me in what I'm trying to do, which is promote my program, promote promote the research that I'm doing and get those ideas out there, get visibility for it, because that's where my bread is buttered, right? If people are reading my work and talking with me about it and sharing it, that's what it's good for. I am not a content creator that's trying to like monetize things, so I get to stay out of that game, and that's nice.
Yeah, the content creation, I guess to be clear about me, it's all because so people talk to me because I don't necessarily want the content to create money. I want it to open the conversation so that I can go help people. And that's and that's really what all of this does. So that's a very good point, that it all has to be specific and it all needs to be focused on what you need to achieve, which is kind of like, I think we were going back and forth about this last night via email. Kind of like my thing is like going, or maybe I don't know, maybe it was somebody else. I was talking about this strategy thing, because I was like, well, most people, what they call strategy is not strategy, and they have no idea what they're doing, and which is both scary but also great for me, because then I'm busy. So and I could charge a premium even, Hannah. So that makes it even more fun. So then let me ask you, and I'll save the best question for last. So I'm going to ask you a really wonky question based out of the blog post that you wrote called Long Tail, Long Game. And this is a really, it's a super wonky marketing question. And so it's going to be product orientation versus market orientation. And this is like maybe where we have a little bit of a difference, because I think, and actually this is interesting, because I think our definitions or our point of views might be more close than they are different. It's just that you come at it and explain it from a different angle than I do.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you show your cards. What do you?
I'm definitely market orientation. That's like the foundation of everything I do. I say the fact of the matter is that as smart as you think I am, or as much as you think I know, I'm a moron. And that but I do know how to find the answers. So everything I do is grounded in research and understanding the market, using primary and secondary data, ethnography, all those big fancy business school words, to understand what the customer wants, and then helping the organizations I work with to deliver on, what that segment, what their market looks like, understanding what behaviors drive them, picking the right targets, and then positioning in ways that are effective. Product orientation, the way I look at it, is you build this product and then you go out and look for customers, and I go the other way. And so I'm kind of curious, because it seems like you might actually go that way versus me, and then that would create all this friction, and it would make for good content then, Hannah.
Yeah.
It's been fun till now.
Yeah, and when you say what is there a difference for you between customer orientation and market orientation, or are those
same definition for me?
Okay. So I'm actually gonna dodge your question and broaden it out to say
that's totally appropriate. That's good.
That this is part of what arts organizations find so challenging, is that there's really like two parts to for most organizations, there's two parts to their mission. One part where they're there to support artists, move their work forward, help their work get out into the world. And then there's another part where they need to serve their community. They need to serve the market and the customers that are around them. And I asked your question about market orientation versus customer orientation, meaning, do you serve the people who are already coming, or do you have to also include and think about the people who aren't coming yet and that are out there? So the reason I'm dodging the question is that I just recognize arts organizations have this tension between these two parts of their mission, and they really feel that tension. And I think they would do better to sometimes claim their space a bit more and say, listen, for this project, this is about supporting the artist, and we will go find a customer base that's interested in it. But the goal here is to help this artwork be made. Right? And then sometimes declare, listen, this is about, having impact and on our community and the people that see it. And it's not that the artist is down there, they're doing it through the art.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
But we are declaring this. And so if the artist requests something that is contradictory to that, we're going to say no. Right. And people have such a hard time saying no. So I think those two parts of the mission are constantly in tension. And internally, we're not clear enough or willing to declare when one is more primary. So we half.
I think you sort of are answering the question. You're definitely answering the question.
Yeah. So in that post, what I wanted to encourage organizations to do was not be in this milquetoast middle of trying to follow, but to actually embrace the kind of leadership, because also people follow leadership and people follow smart curation, the whole idea of give them what they want before they know they want it, right? So to also follow a creative impulse. And if there's an artist that you think does amazing work and will be great for your community, move forward with it, right? Yeah. The other thing I really wanted to encourage was to relieve some pressure of them to have everything be great for all audiences all the time, and to say, listen, we're doing this work and it's going to get a small audience, and that's just the way that it is. And love the audience you have. I think we do not nearly love the audience we have. We're always, it's always grass is always greener. Who's not coming? How can, these people showed up in your theater on this night. Who are they? What do you know about them? How can you make their experience great? And so I think we don't dive in. I think a lot of arts organizations don't dive into the power of the people that are there and helping them to be, and I'm not bribing them to spread the word, but be inspired to spread the word. Absolutely. And that comes from, and that is more in line with the values of the people that work in arts organizations. So I'm trying to point out a place where we often think that there's a contradiction, but there's not, right? No. That's actually, if you can tap into that, you can actually get back to why you love working in this field, right? Where we end up in it with a lot of cynicism and a lot of being burnt out. So again, I'm trying to find that spot. So that's what I was trying to encourage in that writing. I hope that came across.
I think you did, even though you say you dodged the question, I think you actually did a very good job of answering the question. And I think that actually, if you look at both of what we're talking about, you get a probably a fairly comprehensive answer, because I would say that, and I think this is where we would converge. Also, that mushy middle thing is completely get out of there, because you have to take a stand. That's one rule. That's a key Dave marketing rule. It's you can't be everything to everyone. You have to draw a line in the sand. This is not for everybody, right? I am this as opposed to this, and that's totally cool. That's what you do. But back to this thing is, see, for me, and I think this is maybe where you're kind of pointing to, is if I do the research, I understand what are driving people, right? So then it's not so much that well, why aren't these people coming? It's going, well, hold on a second. There's this whole huge, vast group of people who aren't coming, but I have this thing that they really want. So then maybe what I've done is I'm not selling it to them right, because I do have stuff that I know people are going to love, and I'm just not looking at it from their point of view. I'm looking at it from mine, and I'm not your customer, right? And that's the point I'm always trying to make. It's you have to get out of your own head and get into the head of the customer. And you were saying it before, it's when you're teaching, you have to do that. We have to flip the trick and get the people to see the thing from my point of view. So then I have to get people to see everything from the point of view of the customer, because the customer is the one who's going to define whether or not I've created value, and if the value I've created is worthy of whatever they're investing, and if I've done a good job of giving them something they care about. So I think that actually, when you listen to the whole thing, you probably get a pretty good answer about the whole thing. So I don't think you dodged it. I think you lied to people. Hannah, you lied.
I specialize in nuanced and complex.
Okay. We'll call it nuanced, as opposed to you said you weren't going to answer the question. All right. Very good then. I'm going to let that slide then, because so far I think I'm 6 for 6 on these. All right, so the seventh question. This is the best one, right? The seventh one's always one where somebody gets made fun of. In this case, it'll be me. So you said, oh, you read the stuff, you listen to the podcast, you kind of know what I'm up to, and I'll apologize now. So I'm sorry. But talking tickets versus the business of fun. Newsletter or podcast? Which one of my children are you going to pick?
Both. They serve different purposes, Dave.
It's true, though. That's true.
Yes,
that's a legitimate
different
answer.
audiences. That's right. And I think this is what makes marketing so challenging right now. We have to do it all, and it takes a lot of time and taking and putting it all out in different formats. So yeah, I get your email in my inbox and I read it through and it percolates in my ideas, and then I longer form podcasts. The next thing you could do is take the bon mot out of all the podcasts and put those out on LinkedIn, on Twitter, whatever, and get people, so, because still I'm like everything, they're like, oh, there's this webinar and this great topic. And I open it and I'm like, oh, it's an hour. Okay. All right. I gotta, and I end up putting it away, and then I never get back to it. So I'm we need the short form, the long form, the written, the video, the sound. I love it all.
I try to, what I'm trying to do now is, just take like one of these things and like then use it like a lot more, because I think I probably like in this regard maybe work a little too hard. Because I think also this is a good marketing question to open up the whole like the regular part of this thing, even though I think like these things actually like tell us a lot, is that your message doesn't really get through the first or second or third time somebody hears it. It's usually 7, 8, 9, 10 times that people hear the message before it starts to get through. And now we'll talk nerd stuff here, because it's more likely you're going to get sick of your message before your audience really starts to pay attention to it. And so I need to do that for myself. But most of the time, again, I'm not my audience. So I have to step back, look at the world and say, oh, this is what people need to hear these ideas more. So I've been beating the death out of the three kinds of pricing organizations, which are great. The Agro Bro, and I have a picture of Hulk Hogan that I put with that. And, the Neville Chamberlains, right? Those are the people who will just like give away the store. And then my favorite is the Wu-Tang Clan. That's where you like take the profit right off the top. Cash rules everything. Yeah. So I am totally like trying to steal your advice here. So thank you for indulging my quick fire questions, since you did ask. So you received. Now let me ask you let me start the serious portion of this. By asking you, none of it's serious, by the way, you're doing a lot of digital research now. And one of the things I think you're studying or you've been fascinated by and interested in talking a lot about, is how organizations have adapted to the pandemic. And that means that they've done some places better, some places worse, some places in the middle job of embracing audience that's digitally. And what I think is cool, right, is like there's been certain organizations that do a great job, right? They like said, oh, we're going to take this opportunity to reinvent our business right away. Other people kind of like sat on the sidelines, waited things out, and some people fell somewhere in the middle. Knowing that you're doing research on this digital aspect and developing digital audiences, what would be like the big lesson you think you've learned, like the organizations that have been successful have learned from going out and reaching audience digitally in a way that maybe they didn't have to before?
Reach is huge. So I think a lot have found, you could even say all have found, people are interested in their work that they never had the opportunity to engage with before, just talking geographically, right? Mm-hmm. That anyone around the world can tune in to the programming that you're putting out. So there's accessibility there. There's accessibility of people who can't, who might be in your own geographic community, but can't physically get to your venue anymore for reasons of a disability. age, anything like that. And so there's an enormous accessibility opportunity on lots of different levels.
Yeah.
I think they have also maybe dragged kicking and screaming, but they have learned that, oh my gosh, we can make something good digitally. We don't only have to work in the live, in-person, sitting in the dark modality. We can do things in lots of different ways. Whether that's and you asked about digital, but maybe that's outdoor. So they just kind of relaxed rules that they didn't even know that they were putting in place. So it's kind of let the scales fall from their eyes about what limitations they were putting on themselves. And then it's like, wow, the possibilities are actually enormous and can feel overwhelming. Also, I think what is that relationship with people that are only engaging with us digitally? What do we mean to those people? So then there's artistic growth, right? What is possible? How can we be, how can we be supporting artists to innovate in this way? And what's our role going to be in supporting artists to innovate how they're making work? And so I think it's also opening up a whole question. One thing really early on was so interesting, that like as soon as everything shut down, people they reframed their positioning to say, well, we're a theater, but really we're about creativity. Really, we're a theater, but we're about community connection. So they broadened how they thought about what they did. And those things were already there, but they had to honestly had to justify their ongoing existence. Right. Quite frankly, right?
Well, let me stop you before you go too far on this one, because you talked about reframing their position and this thing about they had to justify their existence, and it goes back to kind of what we were talking about before during the quickfire questions. People had allowed themselves, or actually the whole answer, people had allowed themselves to become commodities, if I'm not mistaken, right? At least the way that I think we both talk about it, when in reality, they're these unique experiences. They're these incredible community assets that deserve to be highlighted as unique and special, and not one of a kind. Not as well, you could go to see the theater and this dance troupe, or you can go to the movies, right? No. This is unique. This is how I'm going to explain it to you, and this is why it matters, which I think is probably way more impactful.
Yeah, they do
have. I'm wrong.
Yeah, and it also brings up a little bit of they have to answer that question for themselves, and to be able to say what are we, and what people get uncomfortable with is when you define that, it actually cuts off other possibilities. So to get comfortable with saying this is what we do. I saw some, I watched, I have a paper that's sitting on the shelf 3/4 of the way done, where I watched Christmas Carol productions last fall. And I watched 3 of them and analyzed what I could see through those productions about what the organization's intentions were in making it and how they were positioning themselves. And I saw them struggling with, or trying to both sides, and I think it's kind of okay to both sides, we're making this production for our community because seeing Christmas Carol at our theater is a family tradition for the people in our town, right? In our city. And look at this, we can reach the world, right? So one of the theaters that I looked at was the Guthrie Theater, which is in Minneapolis, and they really do serve people across the whole state. And they had this line, from Bemidji to Berlin, So Bemidji is a small town, right? So they, and it was this way of both saying we're a community organization, and boy, look now, we have this reach. And you as a community person, a ticket buyer, a donor, who are the ones that are going to be continuing to support them now and in the future, look at your impact, right? Now how you are supporting us is reaching worldwide, right? So I thought it was a really pretty brilliant way of positioning the work as still claiming themselves as a community organization, but saying, through that, even translating to the ticket buyer and the donor and the people that support them, what their impact is.
It's a great intention, right? Like it's, these things they're not, I mean, I guess one of the challenges, like sometimes the arts people or organizations are dealing with is they need to tie the thing to the larger world, right? I mean, that's like one of the great things about art, right? Is that it does tie you to a world that you might not necessarily always have a chance to experience. And so like that, a tagline like that is really great. It's very, it's intentional, right? It's, I would say that the positioning is pretty clear, right? It's like, it walks the line, right? It's not the mushy middle. It's like doing both, like about us, but also against everything else, right? Because some of these other organizations, they're not focused on bringing the world to you, right? And bringing you to the world. No. We're here because we can do both. And that, and that's, it's an intention, right? And I think the struggle I see in a lot of organizations, right, is, I think, and you've highlighted it a couple times now, is it's the desire to not hurt anybody's feelings, I think is what I would call. And so then instead of like, just really being clear about this is who we are, this is what we do, you do try to have your foot in every puddle, and it's just like, you can't, you have to take a stand. And it's totally okay because, again, like you said, if you've done a good job of curating programs, or if you've done a good job of doing all these things, everything's not for everyone, but like somebody should be able to find something at some point, or there's just going to often be an audience that is not going to ever get you. And that's totally cool too. Right. And you because you're never going to reach them. And I think a lot of times there's a incredible fascination with this, and I tell people this, and I'm sure you maybe in some form you do too. The non-customers are always going to be more than the customers. The thing is, though, it's important to look at them, but it's also important to like not let them overwhelm everything, because you have a lot of people who, do love what you're doing, right? Look and see what the non-customers are doing as opposed to compared to what you're offering, and find out what, if there's a disconnect between what you're doing, because it should match up. But like, don't just, chase them if they're never going to come, right? And it goes back again to like the market orientation thing, which is like just understanding, right? There's going to be, if you've done your research pretty well, you'll see your segment map will show you 6-8 different segments, and there's going to be a huge group of people that are just never ever going to come to you, right? So don't even waste your time on them. It's just like throwing good marketing dollars after bad, and so that example I think is great.
Yeah. I mean, one danger or one further explanation, I think I completely agree. And as a community organization, that you're getting funding and support to serve your city, or usually your area. If you do look around and there's only a certain group demographically, for example, right, that's coming, and you're not serving all those other people, to do some introspection and say, what are we doing wrong? What are we missing? What do they need that we're not serving? And so to go out and understand them, because we don't want to have elitist organizations.
Yes, exactly.
But it's also okay to, and that's just a flip to say, my market is, my market orientation is my entire area that I can reasonably serve. So that's it could be easy for someone to hear this,
Absolutely
there's people,
right.
And accidentally say, well, you're, that's it. You're only, so that's important. And it's also, to say, listen, we do especially more narrow work of some kind, right?
Yeah.
More experimental, less broad-based. You just say, listen, there's people that are not going to be interested in this, and
Mhm.
it lowers the stress and the
Yeah.
extraneous energy spent by
Mhm.
staff and volunteers, just to say, listen, we are choosing, to do this kind of work, and we're going to go find people that
Yeah.
love it and that are interested in that, and we will expand that as we
Yeah.
can and over time, and we'll aim to do that. But we're never going to be McDonald's, right? And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not what we're going for. And so to have that as a core value that you really act on,
Mhm.
uh, but claiming that, because gosh, we know that the arts can impact people's lives so
Yeah.
wonderfully. And so
Mhm.
to say we're letting some people go feels like we're abandoning,
Yeah.
or that
Oh,
we're
yeah.
admitting, right, that the arts don't have that kind of power. And so that's a struggle. That's just like
Yeah.
a real struggle that I think people feel, that they, but it's okay to say everybody's welcome. We're not
Yeah.
keeping anybody out, but we realistically know that not everybody is going to be interested in everything that we do.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges seems to so the elitist thing that I totally get this, because one of the challenges and one of the things that I'm always a battle that Dave is fighting here, and I'll leave it on me, is that if you segment your market based on demographics, it's like basically looking at the astrological chart and taking it, saying, oh, I'm going to just target Scorpios and Aries. It's BS, right? And so like some of it's like if you look at the behaviors, you're going to see that like just because somebody like that income might not necessarily be the key driver of whether or not somebody goes to the arts or not, right? And so you have to know that, right? And I try to walk people through a process, an exercise called the meaningful actionable grid, to help them understand what's meaningful as far as the decision making process goes, and then what makes people take action. And then it's like there's a great thing, since you use LinkedIn more and you're going to teach me all about it. There's a really great graphic, I think I used it in the newsletter at one point, about Prince Charles and Ozzy Osbourne, who like basically are born the same year. They're both wealthy. They've been divorced. They got the same number of kids. They both live in castles in England. So if you look at it from that standpoint, they're exactly the same. And that should show you how ridiculous the whole thing is. And the other best one I saw was Prince George. Is that William and Kate's oldest child? And Machine Gun Kelly, who's the rapper, who is I think dating one of those other actresses. But people know who Machine Gun Kelly is. They're the same generation, so if you're looking at it's the same thing. I couldn't imagine with a straight face going, yeah, we'll target in Prince George and Machine Gun Kelly, because a 10-year-old and a 30-year-old are totally going to make the same decisions.
Yeah.
And
So the people that are most likely to come to the arts as we have it, as we're defining it now, and as we're presenting it
mhm.
now, are higher educated and higher income, right? So rather than taking that to mean, okay, we need to target high education and high income people, let's step back for a minute and say,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
why? Okay, so what is it about having more education that correlates,
Yeah. Mhm.
correlates, not causes, maybe, right, or maybe it does,
Yeah.
right, people to come to the arts? Like what is that, to interrogate that, to get a higher level of
Mhm.
motivation. The number, when you look at the National Endowment for the Arts survey of public participation in the arts year after year, the number one reason that people say they want to go is to spend time with friends and family.
Mhm.
That cuts across all demographics, right? So if you can tap into that, and understand how, if there's a group that you want to attend that is not, you have to go talk to them about what is going on. You don't ask them, why don't you come? Well, tell me about you. What's going on
Yeah.
in your life, right? So,
What are
and
you doing?
what are you? Because here's the thing: everybody has a cultural life.
Yeah.
everybody has a cultural life. They're just not coming to your organization. Sorry.
Yeah.
So why not? Right? What do they get from those other places? Media, entertainment, other arts that they're not getting from you. And do you want to tap into that? Do you want to offer something else? Okay. And the other thing is that I think in the arts, when we go talk to advocate for public funding, for example, we say the arts has this benefit in people's lives, the arts has this benefit in community, but then we don't use that on an individual. It builds creativity, and creativity causes innovation and everything. But we only think about putting on plays rather than how can we generate creativity.
Right.
And so
how we're transforming people's lives.
Leave all these great reasons on the shelf instead of saying, okay, how can we broaden out what we do? And I think the pandemic did help kind of break out some of that. And I hope that really continues, because it not only makes your work more meaningful to more people, it opens up business opportunities, right? So,
well, you know me, I never miss an opportunity to make a buck. So,
I mean, so how could you, if you're a theater in town, how could you partner with, how could you get, say, the hotel to pay you to make content for their guests about creativity and little 1 minute creativity exercises, right? Because the hotel is in the business of making an experience, and you can add to that. So there's all these, and this is not for fun. This is for money, right? Yes, this is a new business line, right?
It helps you fulfill that mission that you were talking about. Like, you're worried about being able to get those artists out there. That's a great way, right? Because how many BS hotels do I go, have I spent time in where it's like, oh, I could be anywhere in the world, right? And they would pay for that, because compared to the amount of value they'll get. Again, you don't define the value. Go talk to the person. They define the value. I mean, come on.
We're supposed to be creative people, and we check our creativity. I don't know. We are limiting all of this creativity. So,
well, let me ask you this, because you said you bring that up too. There seems to be, and I don't know if your research touches this, there's a dirty, a feeling about being commercially driven. Whereas I'm going, no, if you don't have the money, then you don't have an operation, right? So you have to be, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. You just have to be able to use it to make you fulfill your mission, right? Everybody's hopefully making some money somewhere, right? It's why should you be any different? Because it helps you achieve your goals. And do you think that's part of the reason that the people turn off the creativity around some of these ideas, is because they feel like it's just dirty, it's bad?
Totally. This is centuries old. There is so it's this, and it's tied up with this idea of the artist being the sole genius that needs to be isolated across, right? So, it is huge, and this is another thing that I hope that I can bring is this is why I try and I really acknowledge what happens inside arts organizations about how it can feel like values conflict, right? To just acknowledge the reality of that I saw so much, in my time running theaters myself, that we just feel this tension and this push and pull. So right, to say, and yet we spend so much time talking and thinking about money in arts.
Usually lack of it.
It's usually the lack of it. And I read this great piece by an arts consultant, Adrienne Ellis, who runs Arts Consulting Group, as part of a report that Deloitte actually put together, I think, about the creativity in the art market. But it was so straightforward. He was like, these are my words, this is my interpretation. He was like, there's no white horse coming, right? The arts community talk about Twitter, right? This is what you see on Twitter a lot is, Germany spends billions of dollars on their arts field. Why doesn't that happen in America? And I think that's a great question. And I think We should advocate for that. But it ain't happening anytime soon. Okay?
See, you're like, see, you said that we were gonna have this. We were gonna have this like two sides of the same mirror.
So
I would love it, but it ain't happening.
It's not happening anytime soon.
They won't even fund enough like teachers in schools, so they're gonna throw a bunch of stuff at some hippies and like leotards. No.
Yeah. So that's the long game. So what are you gonna do now? Right? What are you going to do right now? And so don't also spend so much of your brain energy and time wishing and hoping and hand-wringing that we don't have the kind of funding that would entirely change how we operate. Okay. And what we do need to be spending our time on, and this goes back to digital, in my opinion, is getting more people to participate and see value in the arts. At this fundamental daily life level, so that they will buy more tickets, they will donate, they will participate. Because when we really look in the mirror and are honest, we are not important to enough people. So we need to work on being more important to more people. And this is where things like partnerships with the hotel, with branded material about creativity, makes you more visible, makes you more, and it demonstrates value.
Top level awareness, right?
Like awareness. And
it begins there.
It clicks like, oh my gosh, this theater is offering me this little thing that helps me, in my life. Right. So
and it allows you to take that awareness too, and it drives you down the funnel, right? So it's like going, you're getting paid to move people down the funnel, but also it's like it allows you to show off some of your best work. Right. So again, if you talk about your mission, like I want to reach new audiences, I want to support the artists, I want to do all these things, I want to make money because I want to sustain this thing. That stuff like that does it. And it works, right? I've seen it in Seattle. I've seen it in New York, right? I've seen it all over the place. You can do it. Anybody can do it. It's amazing, right? I'm just a money grubbing marketer. I'm not like I'm not highfalutin teacher like you.
But it takes this. We need more business. What Adrienne Ellis was saying, and I had a colleague, Michael Bobbitt, who runs the Massachusetts Arts Council, also say, we need more business model innovation. I mean, we need this because it is not changing, right? We're not suddenly going to. We need to be operating on our own. So back to the very beginning about hustle culture. The very beginning about hustle culture, which can be so toxic. At the same time, I say go seize opportunities. Put your creative cap back on and let's go seize opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities that I think are sitting out there. If we can relax the idea that the only thing that we do is make plays, make dances, play music. There's just so much out there. And I think we can do it in a way that doesn't contradict the values that we hold for what the value of the arts is. And I think it does, but it does take a shift and kind of an expansion and discipline, honestly, to start to think about that way. And that's about being audience oriented and customer oriented, but it doesn't contradict. I mean, the artists are who you will do that through, right? So then you say, I mean, if you can say to an artist, like, what are some ways that we can, we have this idea, they will go crazy with that. And that will help them develop. It's it's a win all around. And so when people are hesitant about digital, this is also where I'm like, okay, like, are you serious about being accessible?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Are you inadvertently waiting for a white horse to come down, or can you start the long game, because it will be a long game, about raising the profile not only of your organization, but of the art form and of the arts and of making it more important to people. So part of it is that they do open their wallet, right? And but that we have more of a grassroots movement and involvement in the arts. Right. Digital is an incredible tool for that. And so what catches people, what stops people is that it is a long It's a long path. You've talked. It's about investing in your brand. It's about investing in the brand of the arts, and that is, as Giles said on your earlier, it feels elusive,
Yeah.
right? And it doesn't exactly return in the moment. But that as a field and as an individual organization is what I would say is the best strategic move right now.
Yeah, and the research that both Giles and I will refer to is a report from the IPA in the UK from Les Binet and Peter Field called The Long and Short of It. And it says that like you have to not pick short term versus long term. It's that you have to focus on both. And there is a form, and it depends on the organization type. I'll have to go back to the research, which I have on as the virtue signaling wall behind me. But I think it's about 60-40. Like B2B is 50-50, but you could, because you have to build the brand, right? But you also need to activate it, because if you activate correctly, it'll pay for the brand building. And over time, you'll see a trend, and everything will work its way up, so that the sales and they typically, their research says about 3 years will give you the opportunity to have higher sales than if you just did the short term alone. It's a great report. It costs about $60 to get it, but it's worth it. It's valuable to anybody who's thinking through this. It's better than any other $60 you're going to spend.
That's great, because as you know, it's so hard, especially in arts organizations where the marketing budget is so tight, and there is like a subtle undercurrent of being resistant to marketing, often, not all the time. It is so hard to spend money on things that you can't measure directly, like a digital ad, right? To say we're just building, but we suffer from it. We suffer from a lack.
Correct.
Any one organization suffers from not having the budget to have the billboard that just sits there in town, that just reminds people like that you exist. Would make our sales efforts, our direct sales, much more effective if the and not arts and but like your that organization. So it's
just emotional level,
this is a
top level stuff. Yeah, exactly. It's
so to
valuable.
have a number to be able to say this is a 3-year project, that you overall will elevate over time. Then you can kind of get people on board. Another thing that you are a champion of that I'm so that I
go
really
on.
on board with, is that marketing is everything that you do, and I think if you take that mentality, that's also a way to again make people more comfortable with marketing in arts organizations that do feel like you're selling out or you're commodity. You're getting into this commercial game where art is supposedly this like this thing that is like untouchable, right? But if you say this, your marketing is building the relationship with your audience, and all of that is your art is a relationship with your audience. And so you need to, if you can start to see the marketing as part of the art, to be very straightforward about it, the marketing is part of the art. If you, the marketing is you're ultimately trying to get this impact on every artist who shares their work has an intention behind sharing it. Otherwise it would stay in the studio. Right. And I think we don't remember that all the time. So to say this, we aim to have this impact. In order to have this impact, it'll be better. We'll reach our goal if we actually start preparing the audience for it and getting them excited about it and aware of it beforehand, and then also after, right? Helping to extend the experience afterwards. So if you could really shift the mentality of someone who's resistant to marketing in that way, that's really great. I have a great friend, Stacy Wood, who's a marketing professor at NC State, and I was telling her once about this resistance in the arts, and she said, "Hannah, do you think that the arts are good for people? Do you think it's a positive force in their life?" And I said, "Well, of course I do." She said, "Do you think those people that are resistant to it think that as well?" I'm like, "Yes, of course they do." She said, "Then all you're doing is bringing something good to them. Yeah. You're not selling them cigarettes. right?
Right.
You are bringing them something good into their life.
Mm-hmm.
So you shouldn't be shy about it. And so what you're doing is expanding the good that exists out in the world, right? So connect that back to to your purpose. And that I thought that was a really great, again, she had to be outside, right,
Mm-hmm.
of my bubble to say, like, Hannah, reality check here.
Yes.
What you're doing is actually helping
Right.
people, community, society.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's I'm going to apologize now because I'm going to have to. I think we could go on all day.
I know. I
And
think we
then,
could.
yeah, we absolutely could. And so I'll ask you on the air here, like, hopefully you'll come back and do another one because I think I didn't even get to all my notes, right? Like I asked like the first question, I never got to the fourth, the third, the second, third, or fourth one because there was still like we want to talk about niche audiences and like the thing you talk about getting out of the ROI business, which I thought was pretty cool and an experimentation. We didn't even get to it, so we'll have to come back to this. But I'll have to tell one embarrassing story about myself. About the business model innovation, and then I'm going to ask people how they can find you. So at Intix, I think in 2019 in Dallas, I was on a panel, and somebody stood up, and I was rude. I'm not usually rude. I try not to be, at least not with people I don't know. Or the people who come to see me speak. But I ended up being rude, and I didn't mean to, but it did come off this way. So somebody raised their hand. They go, well, we're limited in the way that we can generate revenue at our building. And I go, if you think that, you should go get a new job. And then I went out and I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to challenge myself to create 101 ways that you can market, sell, and monetize your live event. And I'll send it to anybody who hands me their business card within a week. And I went out and I created this thing. And I was like, here's 101 ways I pulled out of just like thin air and on a flight back from Dallas to DC. I go, you're only limited in your own capacity to be creative. And so when I hear business model innovation, absolutely. And the thing about the value of the arts is Sean Kelly from VADIC has been on here, and he talked about like he did some research. And they found that like basically people will pay the same thing for their for a streaming event that they will for an in-person event in a lot of cases because the value that people perceive is largely the same. It does, the experience is different, but the value's still there. And I think it's super, super important. And obviously, I think we did have a lot more that we shared than we wouldn't. I was worried about this market versus product thing, but you put me at ease, and if you talk to both of us, then you get a really good explanation for the whole thing. So I want to thank you for doing this. How do people find you on the internets now?
Sure. So the website for my program at UNC-Greensboro is vpa.uncg.edu. I am very easy to find on LinkedIn. I have a blog called RowX that's on artsjournal.com, and RowX is about this space that we've been talking about how arts organizations and audiences and artists really all want the same thing, which is to have meaningful experiences through the arts. So what I'm bringing is thinking about audiences and how to find that space. You can find me on Twitter at Hannah AGNC, those are the good ways to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's a great conversation.
Wow. What did you think of my conversation with Hannah Grannemann? I noticed as I was editing it, the sound levels are better. You figure like after this many years, I would have gotten this thing right by now, but I'm still learning. Make sure you connect with Hannah on Twitter or LinkedIn. Make sure you check me out, davewakeman.com. That's my website. You'll find all the stuff I'm up to, all kinds of crazy stuff going on there. Make sure you get the Talking Tickets newsletter. That's talkingtickets.substack.com. There's also a sign-up box on the website, davewakeman.com. Tomorrow, so much for long notice here. 7 ways to sell more tickets in 2022. It's a special free webinar that I've created with Haley from Booking Protect that we are going to roll out as a way for me to test some new a new platform for signups is really what it is about. So I figured I would share something. I put together a nice little slideshow. I think it'll be fun. There is a link in the signups, or if you can't find that link, just send me an email. It's dave@davewakeman.com. I will hook you up. Make sure you check out my friends at Booking Protect. They made it to America. They had a chance to hang out at Intix. Simon's going to be be giving a special presentation at the Ticketing Professionals Conference in Birmingham in March on fraud and ticket refund and refund protection and all that crazy stuff. But make sure you check out Booking Protect at bookingprotect.com. Find out how you can offer your guest refund protection. Since the pandemic lockdowns have started to lessen, tickets have been more regularly going on sale. We have seen the uptick in people taking on refund protection. It has doubled in a lot of instances. And that is a clear sign that people are looking for the peace of mind and the protection that refund protection offers them. So again, check out bookingprotect.com. Glad that I can actually talk through this intro and outro. The COVID was no fun. Be careful out there. Take care of yourself. But thank you as always for being here, and I will talk to you soon.